Hi there, I'm Violet Van Hees and this is Grow Your Movement Freedom. Welcome. So today we're going to work with a skeleton and a slinky to take a look at an area in the spine where a lot of people are stuck. Where you get stuck, and then when you get stuck you get uncomfortable, you get lack of movement, you even get less strength. And you can change that around. So we're going to take a look at that place, find out where it is, and look at some of the things you can do to help open that up for yourself. So I happen to have a handy dandy skeleton here with me. Don't ask why. It's plastic. And we're going to take a look at this area of the spine down here. This area that's around where the sacrum is, which is this triangle-shaped bone right here. And then the lumbar spine, which is these bones that come down in there. So it's the lower back. This is normally called the lower back here. This is the lower end of that, right where the lumbar spine meets the sacrum. And the thing is that with this area in your back, if it's stuck, you may not even know that that's where you're stuck. It's out of our sense of ourselves a lot of time, especially if it has been locked up. And so we're going to take a look at what it feels like and what you can do to find some movement in there and see what difference that makes. So your spine is a little bit like this slinky. We're going to use the slinky as a model. And your spine is actually built to have movement up its entire length and to be able to open and close and move around and bend a little bit. But if there's certain parts of the spine that get too kinked up or too much of a curve in them or locked in a curve, then you start to get movement in the spine that's not optimal. So for example, if the lower spine happens to get stuck, so one part of your back ends up being forward, kind of stuck forward, like this, and then the rest of the spine tries to move around on top of that, then you're going to get this funny thing where you got something that's pushing forward. So if I'm standing sideways here, this might be my lower back pushing forward, anchored there, and then the upper back tries to move around that, or tries to compensate. So it tends to move a little bit more to the back, or it might even be pushed out to the back to compensate for something else being pushed to the front here. So I'm going to stand on this table for a sec so you can get a better sense of that. So if my lower back ends up going forward a little bit, which is often what happens, this part of the back might come back instead. So that demonstration I just gave you is like this slinky, where the lower back ends up being pushed forward, and then the upper back tries to move around it or lengthen or push to the back to compensate, or something where you're not getting movement right there in that little kinked up spot. Now here's the thing with that. That's the place that if you can release that you get the long column of support inside your body that lets you have more strength with more ease at the same time. It lets you sit more comfortably. It lets you do things better, like ride a horse much better. If you're not starchy and archy and all braced, because it lets you find strength without bracing. And it lets you find freedom of movement, and it lets you actually get the pelvis moving a bit so that you have freedom to find use of the most powerful and strong part of your body, which is all the big bones and the big muscles around the pelvis and around the lower back and in the whole area from your waist down to your legs, basically. Now here's the thing, if this part in your back is locked up, you might feel like when you're doing back stretches, like the cat stretch or something where you're pressing your back into the floor, you might feel like you're actually lengthening that part of your back. But here's how you can find out which parts of your back are actually giving more length for you, and if there are some places that aren't participating. So you can find a flat surface like a wall or a tree or a fence post or a signpost or laying on the floor, whatever works for you. And then you can lay your back on that flat surface. And then you can find out, when you start to press into the flat surface, which parts of your back touch the flat surface. So if I press in and I'm finding that this part is pressing into the surface, but this part still isn't, then I'm missing this part of my back. If, on the other hand, I can find a way to actually let this part, which is where my waistband is or my belt, press into the the surface here. Then I'm starting to get a sense of where that length is. And if I can feel even lower and feel where my sacrum is, right there, and really feel that that gets flatter on the floor. So I'm really getting a flatness down low, low, low here. Then I'm getting into that area. That's tricky. And it's for, if it's been out of your sense of yourself, you may have to spend a bit of time looking for this. And if you're not sure if your back can actually make that movement, one interesting thing to do is imagine that your fingers can sink into yourself from the front and can touch your front of your spine from here. So you might go in from below your belt and imagine touching the front of your spine and inviting the front of the spine to move back in space. And at the same time, imagine that the back of the spine gets to get longer. So what you're inviting your back to do here is actually letting the muscles that are in the back of the spine open up a little bit. So it's as if there's a little bit more space or length in the back of the spine, like in the slinky. So you have some room in there rather than being all squished together. So it's a sense of growing in two directions, almost like growing down from the bottom and up from the top a little bit. So you actually get length, and it feels like this opening up back here. So you're getting the sense of this going on in your back rather than this going on in your back. And you can look for how to do that in a way that feels light and easy. So you can look for how to just find the length there, and being able to just tip the pelvis a little bit. It is a bit of a pelvic tilt, but without a big squeeze in your stomach. So you're not doing ab exercises here. You're trying to find the lightest possible way to actually find some movement and let this get long right down here, down low, rather than up here. So it's going to be down there. And then you get to check out, when this gets long, down here, what does it feel like to open up and look around? Are you able to look out at the world with a different sense of support from down here if you've got this long? So once that place in your back starts to have length, starts to come underneath you in a more natural line of support for you, does something happen in your upper body as well, so that you can find a way to look out at the world. And you might notice the difference between being here and being able to look up versus being, if this sucks in and you're here and then you try to look up. You can find out, does it feel like it's in your neck, or does it feel like suddenly your whole back, from the bottom of your lower back up, has a different kind of support, and maybe lets you look out at the world or move around in the world in a slightly different way. And see if that makes a difference. All right, so that's your tip and your ideas for this week. I wanted to share that because it's so common for so many people, and it really does make a difference when you start to find that place in your back and find out what happens when it actually opens up for you and it gives you some different movement. And there was another video that I did as well that looked at how you can use this movement in your spine in sitting, and it's called comfortable sitting. I'll put the link for that right below here as well if you want to go take a look at that. It has some other ideas built in that also help with this movement. So all of this lets you go out there and just check out gently, carefully, what works for you, what feels good, what difference does it make for you. So have fun with that, happy exploring, and we'll see you next time. If you have any questions, get in touch. My website information is right below here. Thanks very much. Bye for now.